It is Tuesday evening, which means one thing and one thing only here on the Going for Two Live Network. It is time for the next episode of the Fantasy Cheat Sheet. I am Mike, Drop the Mike FF, your host, like always. We also have Evan Ritter here. Evan, what is going on, my man?
Dude, finally glad to be here, man. Life's been hitting me hard, been busy as heck. But I couldn't be more than ecstatic to be here with you guys. Glad to, reunite with you, Mike, but also finally do a show with Zach. We got to kind of start things off with a PLP the other night, but glad to do the cheat sheet. And it took me a while to get here, but I'm here and I ain't going nowhere now, baby. Let's get it.
All right. And just like Evan mentioned, our third host, Zach the Big Pulowski. What is up, Zach?
What's up? No, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad Evan's here with us. I mean, yeah, like Evan mentioned, we got to have a little fun on the PLP the other day. I'm sure we'll be doing more of those, but I'm ready to kick it off and have all three of us throwing some topics around.
All right. So, for the meat and potatoes of our episode, we are going to be giving our bold predictions for the season. But before that, there is a little bit of NFL news we have to get to. And yes, it has to do with money. And I mean bags and bags of cash. Let's just start off with the highest paid player in the league now that is not a quarterback. Aaron Donald goes out and is now gets the huge contract. The contract made him the most expensive player that is not the quarterback position. Evan, was it deserved, and what do you think about his contract?
Well, I mean, first off, when you're the Rams, it just seems like they just have unlimited amounts of freaking money. They just paid Cooper Cup, big contract, and that's how they were able to win a Super Bowl. It feels like they went all in, paid big money, got who they wanted, and it paid off. But I don't see how it's not deserved for Donald. I mean, the guy is a beast. And then when you're a proven production on the field, a proven product on the field like Aaron Donald has been year in, year out. And then you top it off with the Super Bowl last year. I mean, how can you say it's not well deserved? So, yeah, hats off to Aaron Donald. And I mean, the Rams are going to be in it once again, to be a contender.
Yeah, what do you think, real quick, Zach, before I get into the next bit of news?
Like Evan already stated, I mean, it's definitely well deserved. It's confusing with some of the money, but then again, this is an LA based team where they can always convince guys to take very small contracts that are proven vets to come join a successful team and make money elsewhere because a market like LA, you can always find other ways for guys to, do commercials, ads, anything to make some of that money back.
Yeah, for sure. And the other big signings, Evan alluded to it. Cooper Cup got paid big money, but also Hunter Renfrow of the Las Vegas Raiders. Evan already knows I can't say Raiders without saying Raiders. Got paid 2 years. I think it was 2 years, 30 million, something like that for
32.
Renfrow.
Yeah.
32 for Renfrow.
Yep.
And Cooper Cup
21
got
million guaranteed.
21 guaranteed. What do you think, Zach, about those two contracts? And do you think Hunter Renfrow deserved it after 1 year of production in Las Vegas?
I think it's worth it if you're trying to keep a wide receiver core intact. I mean, they've obviously paid a lot to get Devontae. They paid him a lot of money to keep him there for the foreseeable future, and they want to make sure all their weapons are there. Obviously, Jacobs will be gone. At least that's what we're expecting at this point with them not exercising that option. But I think this is going to be a pass first offense. They're stacking up that receiving core. They've got Waller as well. So makes sense. I don't think it's a ridiculous contract by any means. It's definitely a lot of money that can add up, but we'll see. It's tough, like you mentioned, 1 year of production truly, but I think he'll pair nicely with Devontae.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, is there any other big news that either one of you think I missed? If not, we're just going to run it to the main part of the show.
Go ahead and get into it.
Yeah.
All right. So, when I was trying to think about what we should do for the show, for some reason, bold predictions were on my mind. I saw a couple. Obviously, I'm going to have a couple. A couple might shock some people, and I love it. let's just start off. Evan, we're going to get into your first one. What is your prediction with this guy, Michael Pittman from the Indianapolis Colts?
Yeah, so we saw him emerge last season with Carson Wentz behind center, and I'm gonna roll with it again. I think Michael Pittman Jr. will finish as a top 10 fantasy receiver. Uh, you know, Even with Carson Wentz under center last season, finished with 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. He raked in 88 receptions on 129 targets. And he finished in the top 15 with a 25.7% target share. And really, I don't see those numbers going down at all with Matt Ryan throwing him the rock this year. Ryan may be declining. But he easily has enough left in the tank, to produce a top 10 pass catcher. And we've already seen, we've seen Ryan do that many a times. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts had one of the best rookie tight end seasons, of note, last season. So if anything, I'm projecting, a significant bump in those numbers, but by no means do I think they're going down for Pittman. And to another point, besides bringing in a more capable quarterback to target Pittman and get him the ball, on the other end, the Colts really didn't do anything in terms of bringing any type of, true competition that threatens Pittman as that number one, or that's going to, take Matt Ryan's eyes off of him much. He's going to target the crap out of Michael Pittman because, yeah, they brought in Alec Pierce, a second-round wideout out of Cincinnati, who I do like, I think, he could be a Hunter Renfrow type. And then they brought in Jelani Woods out of Virginia, a tight end, but he's a rookie tight end. And unless you're Kyle Pitts, you're really not going to produce year one. And at the end of the day, Alec Pierce and Jelani Woods are both rookies, and that's really all they brought in. So, neither comes to the talent of Pittman, and, that's what I'm going to roll with, man. Michael Pittman and the combination of him and Matt Ryan, it's going to be a nice thing this year, and fantasy owners who have Michael Pittman are going to love the return on investment.
Zach, what do you think about Michael Pittman being a top 10 wide receiver in 2022, my man?
I don't know if I necessarily agree to the extent of Evan where it's a top 10 season, but I do love Michael Pittman this year. I'm high on Matty Ice and him returning to form in some regard. Last year in Atlanta, this was a poor offensive line, a lack of weapons. I mean, Ridley was only there part of the year, and then it was just Pitts. Obviously, we had Cordero Patterson, but it's really tough to gauge when Matt Ryan's getting older. He can't scramble. He never could. And when he's not protected, but the Colts have a really elite offensive line. They're built around the run, and someone else is going to have to get some attention on that offense, and it's easily going to be Michael Pittman. I also like Alec Pierce. I like Jelani Woods. Yes, they have Mo Alley Cox, but realistically, most of those targets, most of those plays, when it's not getting fed to JT, it's coming Pittman's way, and I have a hard time seeing him not produce with that. So I like Pittman a lot. I definitely am. I'm high on him. It's tough to really gauge in that offense, but I like Pittman, and I mean, if everything breaks right, I easily could see a top 10 year for sure.
Well, Jamie definitely agrees with you. Pittman
Yeah.
has a top 10 upside, but I have one question for you before we get to the next topic, Evan. You get to pick between these two wide receivers,
Okay.
dynasty or redraft. Who do you want? Because I've been in group chats that this is a polarizing topic. Michael Pittman or Scary Terry?
Michael Pittman all day. Yeah.
All right. See, Zach's already shaking his head.
I'll take it. Absolutely. I don't even get me started on Scary Terry. I'll throw him away in the trash. No,
I know.
Jahan Dotson could end up being the best receiver on the Commanders this year.
Yeah, I'm out on. I was never in on Scary Terry.
No, I know you weren't. I just knew that would ruffle the feathers.
You asked for bold predictions, Mike, and trust me, I gave them to you. I'll be happy if
trust me, I got to know. I have one coming up. I got one coming up that's going to be bold. Trust me.
This is a fun topic. I was excited for this show.
So before we get into yours, Evan or Zach, I want to bring up a bold prediction that someone in the chat brought up from Facebook. Their bold prediction is Packers make a serious run at Scary Terry.
They don't have the money for it.
When I saw that, I thought of you right away. I was waiting for her to bring that up. All right. So speaking of Zach and speaking of his favorite team, his first bold prediction, I'm just going to put this up there and he can start talking. The Green Bay Packers. Go ahead, Zach.
So I've got two of note that are fantasy relevant. It's the Packers defense / special teams, and then also Aaron Rodgers. They kind of coexist together, so I'll just kind of get into my Packer rant. But every year in the playoffs, we watch the Packers, who had an elite offense, lose to a team that had a superior defense, that was an elite defense. And well, now the Packers are finally trying to change it. Obviously, they don't know how many years left they have with Aaron, and they're trying to build a stout defense. And the Packers are going to play low scoring games. That's what I'm expecting. I'm not expecting a lot of blowouts, a lot of prolific, high scoring attacks. And I mean, the Packers don't really have a lot of weaponry either. I'm high on Christian Watson, but they have Sammy Watkins, Alan Lazard, not a lot of great guys out there, and then a bunch of rookies where it's tough to really predict. So I'm expecting AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones to be the focal point of that offense. And realistically, I think the Packers defense / special teams will finish top 5. They're currently on Fantasy Pros ranked as the defense 14 in yearlies, and that's a defense I'm going to gladly take in a later round with really high upside. They were really aggressive in regards to Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt. Jair Alexander's coming back from injury. They re-signed Rasul Douglas. They re-signed Devondre Campbell. They've already got a lot of other great pieces like Kenny Clark and so many more. So, I mean, I'm really excited for what this defense can be, and I think it's going to be a really different kind of Green Bay Packer team than we've seen before. But on the Rodgers front, it's currently QB9 in yearly. I think he's outside of the top 10. I think he's outside of potentially the top 15. And that's just speaking to the point that I was already referencing. I think Rodgers will have a great year, but I'm expecting it to be not that high volume of passing yards, that high volume of passing touchdowns. I could see like in years past where it's 28 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Like it'll be a great TD to INT ratio, but it's not going to be anything dominant in regards to really producing, especially with so many pass first offenses and teams with relatively shitty defenses where they're throwing the ball a lot. So I could see a lot of QBs surpassing them in fantasy.
Evan, what do you think about Green Bay's defense in general?
I'm with Zach on this. Green Bay's defense. He already alluded to the 2 Georgia Bulldogs that they grabbed in the draft. And I mean, before the draft, we saw them dominate the Niners in the playoffs last year. I think they let something like 12 first downs, only 106 passing yards. It was like 4.1 yards per play. I mean, they absolutely dominated the Niners, and how they found a way to lose that game is just mind-boggling. But, then you get Jair Alexander coming back, Preston Smith, those 2 stud rookies. I think it's definitely going to be, a unit that the Packers lean on heavily. And honestly, if I was going to rank them, I would rank them as a top 5 defense. In terms of Rodgers, he's kind of like Brady for me, man. Every time I want to say, this is it. This is it. This is going to be a down year for him. They just somehow find a way to, prove me wrong and any other naysayers wrong. But it is Aaron Rodgers, but he's going to have to make the best out of it with these weapons that he has. I mean, because no Devontae Adams, I can't wait to see, what he does. Jamie, once again in the chat, alluding to Alan Lazard, and I'm a big Alan Lazard guy. And, it's going to be him and Christian Watson that are going to have to step up. And if anyone can make a mediocre receiving core look better than they really are, it's Aaron Rodgers. But we're gonna see. I don't. A lot of people think. Me and I think Jeff had this conversation during the PLP that we could see them run more. I just don't necessarily know how, regardless of your receivers, regardless if you lost Devontae Adams, how do you take the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands? So that's just hard for me to agree on that standpoint. But hey, this is a bold prediction show. You know what I mean? This is what
And
I like about this.
I agree with what you're saying, though. It's not referring to a matter of a regression from Rodgers or really just being a run first offense necessarily. But I think LaFleur is a very creative head coach where he identifies the fact that, my two best weapons outside of Rodgers are going to be through Jones and Dillon. So I think some of the creativity they're talking about in camps of trying to do two running back formations where they're both out there at the same time. And yeah, I don't think Rodgers will be bad. I think he'll figure it out regardless. I just think there's so many other QBs that are going to be slinging it in regards to fantasy production where they'll have a lot more passing yards, they'll have a lot more touchdowns, and obviously they'll have a lot more interceptions too. But in most formats, QBs are only relatively punished for interceptions in comparison to touchdowns.
True that.
That is 100% fact. The one thing I will say about this topic before we keep going is on the show that I'm on Friday nights, that I'm on weekly on Friday nights, we were discussing the Aaron Rodgers situation, and it got brought up about where he's going. The question we were talking about was where is he going to end up rank wise compared to David Carr because of Devontae Adams, and someone said that he was going to finish outside the top 15. That caused a little bit of a discussion. I personally think he's not going to be I don't think he's going to end up where his ranking is now. I do think he'll be a top 12 quarterback, but I think it's going to be somewhere in between 10 and 12, other than 7, 8, 9. I think he's going to be a low end QB1, but there will be weeks for the same reason that Evan mentioned. I do think they're going to run a little bit more, partly because it's Matt LaFleur and he'll do whatever he wants. And I think that's part of the reason I see him as a low end one, but there will be weeks that he'll bust more than years in the past. So, for my topic, before I bring the name up, if I would tell you that a quarterback that threw for 3,200 yards last year, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and was sacked 35 times was going to be a top 15 quarterback this year, you'd probably think I'm crazy. And when I go bold predictions, I go bold. Here we go. Jared Goff is going to be a top 15 quarterback. Do I think it's highly likely that it's going to happen? No. But with the right pieces in place and the right things happening, I think Dan Campbell is the perfect coach for that team. Do I think there's a good chance Jared Goff's not even the quarterback next year in 2023. But I still think he could be a top 15 QB and still not be the quarterback next year. You have a coach in Dan Campbell that I like. You got DeAndre Swift, who can catch the ball out of the backfield, and I think they're going to try to get him more involved. You got TJ Hawkinson, who is a stud at tight end. He's probably going to drop a little bit in fantasy because all the other options. So you got St. Brown, who came out of nowhere in the last 6-7 weeks of the year because of the lack of help there was no one else left. You go sign DJ Chark. Quentin Cephas is coming back from injury. I like Quentin Cephas. I did from the beginning. I hope he has some production. And then we can't forget that they did go ahead, trade up in the draft with a division rival in the Minnesota Vikings to go pick Jameson Williams out of Alabama. There is a chance he's not ready for training camp and maybe the very beginning of the season. But at some point, I do believe Jameson Williams is going to have a factor. That offensive line is going to be getting better still. I think Dan Campbell is going to put Jared Goff in positions to succeed. This team is not going to be in last place in this division this year. They're going to be better. I think he could be – I think my realistic, I think he'll be a top 18, but I think he could end up a top 15 quarterback and a higher end QB2 for Superflex. Zach, tell me if I'm wrong.
Don't want to be too negative here, but I'll start
I
with
know,
saying
I already know. I already know. That's why I came to
I
you.
had to pull up the chart of all the QBs just to see who I could even convince myself of him passing. I mean, I think a good year for Jared Goff would be finishing 20th. I have a hard time seeing him really step any higher than that. I mean, I have a hard time seeing him hit 20, and that's not even with what you mentioned. I look at Jared Goff, and he's got weapons around him. I don't think he's unfairly criticized. He's not great. He's not necessarily even good, but I mean, I could think of him being a serviceable just starter somewhere for a while. Like obviously Detroit has enough things they need to work on elsewhere, but it's just how many talented QBs we have in the league right now and how many guys we're kind of expecting to take the next step this year. Guys like Tua who are outside the top 15 right now, you know, that we're expecting big things from him, or some people are. I can't really say I'm necessarily on board, but Trevor Lawrence, I mean, Tannehill's tough to say. Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, Zach Wilson. I just I have a hard time saying I think QB 22 is a good year for Jared Goff. I don't know if I feel comfortable going any higher than that.
Side bet for this show. He outproduces Jameis Winston and Ryan Tannehill.
Can we get Zach Wilson in on there?
We'll talk after the show.
Because I would feel more confident in the Mormon Mahomes than I would the other two. I don't necessarily agree, or I don't necessarily disagree with Tannehill, especially with AJ Brown gone now. But Evan, what are your thoughts on Mike's take here with Jared Goff?
Yeah, I mean it's bold.
That's why I told you when I go bold, I go bold.
I was trying to see if I could. I don't know if Zach you'd be able to pull it up. The 2018, quarterback, the fantasy leaders. But I couldn't pull it up.
2000. You want 2018?
Yeah, to see, because that was that was Goff's best year.
I've got it. 2018. He finished as QB7.
Yeah, so that was his best year. So QB7. He threw for what? How many touchdowns did he throw for that year? He threw 32 touchdowns, over 4,500 yards. But he had 561 attempts. He saw less than 500 attempts last season. I mean, he didn't throw many interceptions. He only threw 8 interceptions.
Yeah.
I don't know, with the weapons, and I think he could be efficient enough, and with the weapons he has, I mean, anything could happen. I just don't know that he's going to get the volume, to even come close to it. But hey, man, stranger things have happened.
I mean, and that's a good point to reference, 2018. But when I look at that, I also look at, it's Sean McVay, not Dan Campbell. And whether you like or hate, I mean, I don't think anyone hates Dan Campbell, but I don't see him as the creative genius that Sean McVay is. And, they've got a lot of weapons, but I think it'll be a lot of weird weeks for him because, the NFC North is a very rebuilding division. The Bears aren't in necessarily a good spot. The Vikings are, who knows, they could be a playoff team. And I believe the NFC North also plays the NFC East. So there could be some favorable matchups where if it's turning into a high scoring game, Goff is putting up big numbers and it could definitely result in something like what Mike's suggesting.
Yeah. Like I said, am I expecting it to happen? Absolutely not. But when I see bold predictions, let's do this thing. And I know, Evan, I've known you for about a year now. I know I'm just waiting for one that's hot, and I just have a feeling this might be one. What do you think about Mr. Deontay Johnson?
All right, man. Bear with me here. But I do not have Deontay Johnson as a top 20 receiver.
I knew it.
This year. I just think that the Steelers are going to lean heavily, and I mean heavily, on Najee Harris run him into the ground, hand the ball off to the big fella as many freaking times as they can. And that's going to lead to Deontay Johnson falling outside of the top 20 wide receivers. So here's the thing with Johnson. He relied on an insane amount of volume and target share from the arm of Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, it was clear Johnson was always Roethlisberger's favorite target. He saw 9.6 targets per game in 2020, 10.5 last season. And so with Big Ben now retired, I just expect that volume to decrease tremendously, regardless of whether or not, the Steelers decide to go with Mitchell Trubisky or they turn the keys to the kingdom over to Pickett, to begin the year. There's just no doubt in my mind that the Steelers, will look to run more. And even when they do throw, I kind of expect Trubisky or Pickett, whichever one it is, to find their own favorite target. Regardless, I know Deontay Johnson is the best talent, but still find their own, favorite target. Spread the ball around. They have Pat Freiermuth. We know young quarterbacks like to have a security blanket and lean on that tight end when they can. So I just think with that, I don't see either QB hyper targeting, Deontay Johnson like Roethlisberger did, especially on we saw Big Ben and Johnson hook up on those intermediate crossing routes over and over again. Big Ben getting the ball out of his hands quick as hell. Deontay Johnson just once again, relying on that volume. And that was just what Big Ben was capable of towards the latter of his career. So that's all he could really do. And Deontay Johnson greatly benefit from that. He benefited from, if I could say that word, he benefited from Big Ben's decline and, the rapport they have with one another. So I think the biggest factor here was once again the decrease in volume that Johnson's going to see. That's what allowed him to be a top fantasy receiver. But even though he was seeing a ton of volume and all of it was pretty much short throws, he actually should have had a higher catch rate if you really look at it, because he had an average ADOT of only 8.52 yards. So, to put the cherry on top, last year Johnson had a career high 8 touchdowns last year, despite ranking 32nd in end zone targets. Only 4 receivers last year finished inside the top 20 in PPR with less than 7.5 targets per game, and that was because they had at least 4 touchdowns. Without the volume from Big Ben, Deontay Johnson won't be able to sustain as a top 20 wideout.
All right, before I throw it to you real quick, Zach. So, Evan, I'm not 100%. I do think you're a little crazy. I just had a feeling that was the part of the way you were going. I had a feeling you were going negative on it. I haven't talked to you in a while. I did trade for Deontay Johnson, but I want to get your takes on the trade. Here's why. I gave up. It was an IDP league, so it was a 6-round rookie draft. But some people go 6 rounds. Yeah, because there's IDP. That's why.
Yeah.
So I gave up Deontay Johnson. I traded away player X, which I'll say in a minute.
Okay.
And a 6th round pick in the draft that we just got done with for Deontay Johnson. A week before, literally 5 days to be exact, before the player got suspended. And that player was DeAndre Hopkins. So I traded away DeAndre. I wanted the youth is why. I wanted the age difference. I already have Cooper Kupp on that team. I had Cooper Kupp and DeAndre. I traded DeAndre for Deontay. So I hope he does good, but I see where you're coming from.
Kenny Pickett has the draft capital, but do they turn, the keys right over to him? And so can the time before they turn over to Pickett, can Mitchell Trubisky sustain, a top 20 wide receiver? I don't know. So that's another thing that, we have to mix into this.
Yeah. Zach, real quick, what are your quick takes on this point?
Well, first off, I don't hate that trade for you at all. I mean, I'm out on Deontay Johnson in regards to, I agree with Evan. I don't see him being in the top 20, but I like that trade for you. My concern with Deontay as well is this is like I even talked about with Green Bay. Obviously, a little different situation with that offense, but it's a good defense and a lot of questions, especially at QB with this team, uh, for how they're going to put up points. I'm expecting low scoring games. I'm expecting them to really just depend on their defense and Najee Harris and a lot of ground and pound type stuff. I just don't really see it. I'm not the biggest anti Mitch guy for this year. I don't like Kenny. I'll be open about my dislike for the 2022 QBs, but I don't see the production. It's hard to really see. I could see him finishing as wide receiver 32 or something this year and it not being shocking.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of Mr. Mitchell Trubisky, he was drafted and ruined by a certain franchise, the Chicago Bears. And we're going to start talking about the Chicago Bears because Zach wants to talk about Cole Kmet. Take it away, Zach.
I did this just in time. Evan and I are in a startup, and I just got aggressive in trading up so I could draft Cole Kmet. I I love him. I mean, we've seen enough times. I did a blind poll on Twitter a couple months ago now where I was comparing Cole Kmet, Dallas Goddard, and uh, one other tight end this past year where it was targets, receptions, touchdowns, yards, and in the blind survey, everyone was picking the Cole Kmet one. And it's funny because he had a lot of targets that didn't result in receptions. He also had 0 touchdowns. But I look at it where I'm going to bet on the guy that had 0 touchdowns rather than the guy who had 12 touchdowns the year prior, because realistically, there's a happy medium in there. I don't know what this offense will look like with Justin Fields, but I know they lost Allen Robinson, whether you love him or hate him. It's got to go to someone else when they're throwing the ball other than Darnell Mooney, and that's going to be Cole Kmet. I love him. I'm very high on him. I think he's going to finish as tight end 5. He's right now tight end 15. I don't understand why. That's for yearly. It's roughly tight end 12 in Dynasty. I just don't understand that, though. There's a lot of tight ends where there's questions week to week, health wise or age, production, hot, cold streaks with these tight ends. And Cole Kmet's relatively consistent. So that's a guy I'm trying to get in. I'm trying to get as many opportunities at him as I can in every league.
So personally, what I think part of it is, and I do agree with you, I'm not as bullish on him as you are, but I do like Cole Kmet. Um, Personally, I think part of it is recency bias on the team. People are just have been burned by that off, even though it's a new coaching staff. People have been burned by that team so much in the past few years that people are a little bit of afraid to put as much gusto as trading up like you did and going all in for him. But I agree with you on one thing, and I do have to bring one thing up before I throw it to Evan real quick. Like you said, they have Darnell Mooney and some guy that's older than me in Geriatric Jones. And other than that, they don't have anyone on the outside. I mean, they go get Byron Pringle from my Kansas City Chiefs thinking he's going to do something. No, come on. So Cole Kmet for this team to do good and for Fields to have a successful year, I think Kmet has to have a successful year on top of that. Evan, what do you think, my man?
I love me some Cole Kmet, man. I really do. I mean, the lack of weapons in Chicago alone, should make him a high end, tight end and allow him to take a leap. And I don't, third year is kind of like that sweet spot for tight ends to kind of take that leap. You know what I mean? And he just got freaking, you know, beat up by Jimmy Graham in the red zone. He took touchdowns away from Kmet. Jimmy Graham's no longer there. So Cole Kmet should be, when the Bears are in the red zone, Cole Kmet should be targeted heavily. And, a cool stat that I found on Kmet is no tight end last season finished with more fantasy points under expectation, than Cole Kmet did last year. Minus 36.6, under expectation. So, the talent's there. and the volume should be there. He should get red zone looks, and I expect Justin Fields to take a step forward. So yeah, I think it should be Justin Fields on offense, Justin Fields, Monty, and then Mooney and Komet. And Komet's going to be a big, big red zone target for Fields.
And plus, like, I know Mike even touched on it. People have been burned by Bears, but they were burned mainly by Allen Robinson or Tariq Cohen. I mean, has always, for the most part, been out on Monty, and he's been fairly consistent. Mooney has been kind of a undervalued gem. And so some of those guys, if you're investing the right places, like for me, I love the Bears in fantasy because I kept underpaying for these guys and getting good results. But other people, I get it. But I think there's also a distaste due to the previous head coach.
That's
Like,
my issue. That's
and
that's more
but
where I was going within the players
yeah,
themselves.
and we don't know what this team is going to look like under a new regime, but at the same time, that's a reason in its own to be optimistic about these weapons and what they can produce in regards to fantasy this year.
All right. So now that we're done talking about the Bears, let's go to the NFC East. Let's go to Evan's division for my next one. And that is Saquon's himself, Saquon Barkley. This isn't as hot of a take as my Jared Goff one, but I do think he's going to have a bounce back year. He was starting to produce pretty dang well. He was starting to produce very well when he rolled his ankle and got hurt against Evans' freaking Dallas Cowboys. Yes, the year prior he had his torn ACL, but my prediction is Saquon Barkley is a top 10 running back. He's going at 12 to 14 in underdog right now. I think he's going to be a top 10 running back, and I think he could finish even in the top 8 at running back this year. I think he could even go. I'm not saying he's going to, but I could see a possibility with the new system with Brian Dable and Mike Kafka being the new OC coming over from the Chiefs, being their quarterbacks coach, liking to use the running backs in the passing game. They're already saying that he is running routes. I'm not saying he's going to go out and run routes all the time, lined up as a X or Y or anything like that. But I do think that he is going to catch more balls out of the backfield. I could see him getting anywhere between 50 and 60 catches. So I think in half PPR, he's going to end up as a top 8 to 10 running back this year and redeem himself. Evan, tell me why I'm wrong. I know you. I think you're gonna. I think you're against Barkley. I think I remember you were anti-Barkley.
It's just he can't. He just doesn't seem to be the same. I'm not, and I'm out on Zeke too. I mean, they just look like, they're both in decline. And I don't know. Before he did get hurt, you did see kind of signs of that burst starting to get back. I was like, okay, maybe it still is there. And then he went down, but I just feel like the turf monster, the injury bug, everybody's out to get Saquon Barkley. But I don't know. New offense, the talent is hard to deny, but I don't want to. I hate, injury prone, but I hate to, label guys that. But when you can't stay healthy, you can't stay healthy. And if you can't stay healthy, the best ability is availability. And if you can't stay healthy, then you can't produce. But, uh, you know, I'm not with you, but I do know that the talent's there. And in a new system, who knows, man? Maybe he can get back to that 385 a half PPR points, 2,000 combined yards, 15 touchdowns, 91 catches, like we saw in his rookie year. But that's for you, my man. I don't know if I'm with you on that.
Oh, he's not going to go that high. I don't think he's going to. He ain't going to produce number 2 overall and have 90 catches and all that. He ain't going to do that. Zach, I know you think I'm wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just start there. Yeah, I disagree. No, I mean, it's tough because I try not to label guys as injury prone as well. But for me, it's more so like comparing Barkley to McCaffrey in a sense, where McCaffrey is kind of a whole bunch of smaller injuries where he's also not on the field, but when they're on the field, they're very productive. But for Barkley, it was a torn ACL, and then obviously last year it was a high ankle sprain. But with the ligament stuff, I saw some flashes of the old Saquon, but I didn't really see enough to believe fully that it was what it was before. And I can see a realm where he does finish as a top tier running back in fantasy, and I can see a realm where he's out most of the year and he's just not even relevant. And there's a happy medium in there, but for me, Saquon's just kind of a do not touch guy because I'll let someone else take that risk, and I'm not really confident one way or another where I'm willing to gamble on him.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean,
I just want to say I kind of agree with you, Zach, in the sense that yes, I think he could be that 8 to 10, but there is definitely that realm where he is RB40 and he's out for 10 games. Like, yeah.
He's
and
a boom bust, a big
yeah,
boom bust.
yeah, exactly. And if he does stay healthy, he's going to need Daniel Jones to take a step forward, to take some
Yep.
focus off of him, and he's going to need that offensive line to play better as well. So he needs everything to kind of
He
go
needs
right
Evan
for him to
Neal to
get
show
that.
why Evan Neal was a top 10 pick.
Because exactly. And I just don't know that he can rely on his talent alone anymore. He needs the system and, the players around him as well as his quarterback to help him out some.
Yeah. So before we get into Evan's next one, I just want to remind everyone out there that we are live on the Going for Two Live Network. You can check us out on YouTube. Give us the thumbs up, comment, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff that helps us out with the algorithm. So, Evan, for yours, we're going to stay with the NFC East. And of course, you can't come back on after a few weeks break, after a few month break, and not talk about your Cowgirls. Talk about your boy. We know you love him.
Oh man, do I love him. Love him, love him, love him. Yeah, Dak Prescott is gonna get right back to form, man. Finished as a top 3 fantasy quarterback, if not higher. All reports coming out of camp, Dak is way ahead of the curve, way ahead of schedule, feeling 10 times better than he did at this point last season. Obviously the gruesome injury he sustained in 2020 had a lot to do with that. And also limited him from being able to use his legs as much as he and the Cowboys probably would have liked last season. But with that being said, it's a whole new year, baby. He's had time to rest. He's had time to get healthy. Last year he did post career lows in all of his rushing statistics last year, apart from, obviously that 2020 season where he only played 5 games. Because apart from that, 2020 where he had that season ending ankle fracture, he had 48 rushing attempts last season, only 146 yards, and only one freaking touchdown, man. To put things in perspective, before getting hurt in 2020, he had already had 3 rushing touchdowns through only 4 games. So, with some time to rest, a whole new year, with Dak feeling himself again, you can expect him. We know he's going to be one of the elites through the air. I mean, in that Cowboys offense, he's going to put up big numbers through the air. But with that extra little mobility. Yeah, he's not going to be a Justin Fields. He's not going to be a Lamar Jackson. But those 5 plus 6 plus touchdowns, padded on to those mega stats through the air, and having that extra little ability to put up 300 plus rushing yards and 5 or more touchdowns. And yeah, you got yourself a top 3 quarterback.
Zach, tell him why he's wrong.
Well, I feel like I'm disagreeing with almost every. I guess I agreed with Evan on a couple of his early.
This will be the only one that you disagreed on with Evan.
I'm glad. I'm glad there's no bias from Evan on this one. At least I'll just start with that. No, I like Dak healthy, full off season in that regard. I don't know if I want to say top 5 even. I don't feel comfortable with that. I'm going to take Stafford over him. I'm going to take Russell Wilson over him. I'm going to take Burrow, Murray, Jackson. Yeah, I'm looking at Dak right around 9 or 10. Yeah, I feel good with that. I feel confident with that. I don't see it. I mean, I'm gonna take Derek Carr before him.
All right, you lost me with that one.
And to answer your question from earlier, was Derek Carr versus someone else? With the topic,
it was Derek Carr and Rodgers.
I'll take Derek Carr over Rodgers for fantasy production this year too.
And that's what everyone on that show said. So
Devontae Adams can make any quarterback better, man. That's for sure.
So here's what I'm gonna tell you. I am right in the middle of you two boys. I don't think he's gonna finish in the top 3, partly because I just don't know what's gonna happen with that team. But I'm not saying I think he's gonna end up being like 5 to 7, somewhere in that range. I do like him better than some people do. He dropped a little bit in my dynasty rankings that I was doing last year. I mean, last year I had him over Lamar, and I got lambasted over that. I had him like in my top 5 dynasty rankings a lot going into last year over Lamar, and people thought I was crazy, and I honestly didn't care. But I think he's going to have a good year. I do agree with what you were saying in my Saquon take, Evan, about I do think Zeke is going to diminish a little bit. I think it's going to be more of a Pollard Zeke split, if not a little more 60-40 the other way.
Mm-hmm.
But losing Amari Cooper, who they got
Jalen
Tolbert. You get Jalen Tolbert, you get Schultz. That Schultz is still there. I think Schultz is going to have a good year. I just don't think it's enough to put him in the top 3, but I don't think he's going to have a bad year whatsoever.
But without Cooper, that's what makes it even more bold. No Cooper there.
I love it. I love the going. And, I do think it's a bold take, and trust me, I love my bold takes.
Real quick, kind of, what you were talking about, what you and Zach were talking about with what they're doing in Green Bay with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. They've been doing that in camp too with Zeke and Pollard out in the slot. So that should be fun to watch.
Yeah. So, Zach, we talked before the show. Me and you are 100% in agreement in this one. So if someone's going to disagree with you, it's going to have to be Evan. So we'll see. Let's talk about some Mr. Russell Gage.
Give it to me. I want all the stock of Russell Gage. It's cheap and it's going to be very productive. I have a hard time seeing it being any other way at this point. Chris Godwin, don't know when he's going to be back. Don't know how great he'll look off the bat. And someone else has to get the targets besides Mike Evans. Yeah, there's a speculation that Gronk will be back at some point. He's just having a good time partying this summer. We don't know that for certain. Say Gronk's gone as well. It's just going to be Evans and someone else. And it's not going to be Scotty Miller if Russell Gage is there. And I see Russell Gage as the clear wide receiver 2 on this team for right now. And I want all the stock of it I can get. Because, right now in yearly, he's roughly wide receiver 49. I'm thinking he's going to finish as a top 30 wide receiver. And right on that fringe, I'm not going to say, hey, top 15 guy. There's a lot of big names that are getting fed a lot more than him higher on that list. But I love Russell Gage, and especially relative to where he's being drafted and what kind of price you're paying to get him. I want him.
All right, so before I throw it to you, Evan, I do think he could end up being like a top 30, 36 wide receiver, even if and when, because I do think it's going to happen. I am assuming that Gronk will be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer this year, and I still think he will put up those numbers because I think because of the Godwin situation, I think he'll end up being the number 2, and then to save Godwin for the playoffs, I think they're not going to want to rush Godwin back and get him hurt or, rush him too much. That's why I think Russell Gage is going to end up being the number 2 wide receiver on that team no matter what. Evan, take it away.
Yeah, especially where you can get Russell Gage in drafts, it's just like, and now that he's attached to Tom Brady, with the injury to Chris Godwin, it's like, why not take a shot on him? You saw what Antonio Brown did in that offense with, Tom Brady attached to him. And Russell Gage last season had an 11.6 or something yards per catch. You know what I mean? Like, now he has Tom Brady thrown to him. He's going to see a lot of man coverage because you still have Mike Evans. You have to account for Mike Evans. And Russell Gage, if you look at the numbers, he can absolutely tear up man coverage. He had a better man coverage rate than Antonio Brown. Not by much, but it still was better. And like I said, you have to account for Mike Evans. Tom Brady's going to have to, focus on another weapon, and Russell Gage is going to step up and do that. And what rounds it all into form for me is just where you can get him in drafts. I mean, he's an absolute steal this year. He's in a great offense. He has the best quarterback of all time throwing to him. So I am totally with Zach. Give me all the freaking Russell Gage I can get.
And I don't want to pretend that Russell Gage is the talent that Antonio Brown is, but
No.
we've seen Antonio Brown produce when Godwin, Gronk, Evans are all out there.
It's all about
the
opportunity.
And with the opportunity there, but even if the other guys are there, there's still room for opportunity because we've seen other guys produce as wide receiver 3 with a fully healthy Tampa Bay offense.
Yep.
So, okay, for my last take before we get into the end of the show, when I say I like to go bold, I'm going bold. Duval! And no, for everyone watching, this is not a fantasy take, but I'm going to take a little bit of a page out of Mr. Evans' playbook for a quick sec. Evan, do you know currently what the Jacksonville Jaguars win total is in Las Vegas?
No, I don't right now. I
Okay.
have not looked into it. I've been doing NBA, man, heavy.
All right. So right now, Vegas has the Jacksonville Jaguars win total at 6.5. That division is not as good as I think people think it is. Tennessee's dropped a little bit. I do think Indy is the best team in that division, but Indy is vulnerable. Yes, Houston has tried to get better. They've gotten Lovie Smith, Davis Mills, maybe take a step up, but they're still the Houston Texans, okay? That division, I think, can be not easy, but that division is not going to be you're not going to have a 12-13 team win out of that division. So my bold take, and yes, I don't think this is for sure going to happen. I'm just saying it could happen if everything falls in line, because you bring in Doug Peterson, the former Super Bowl winning coach from Philly. I don't want to give too much away, but there's a player that's going to be brought up later in the show that I absolutely love. They have just signed Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. Yes, they still have Visca. I think Evan Ingram is a late round pickup for you can in best ball. I honestly think Evan is going to love Evan Ingram cheap in DFS.
Brandon Sheriff to that O-line.
Brandon Sheriff to the O-line. They go out on the defense and get
The
Walker.
Unicorn.
Yeah. You get him at one. Then you go get Chad Mumma. You get my favorite, Devin Lloyd. So my mate, and I haven't even brought up Mr. Sunshine himself, freaking Trevor Lawrence, who I think is going to come out and have a good year. Jacksonville Jaguars, champions of the AFC South. That's the bold take. Evan, go.
I mean, champions of the AFC South.
Things have to line up, but
yeah. I mean, we still expect the Colts and Titans to be in the running. You know what I mean? The Texans, I can see them beating them out. But I think looking at their schedule, that's where things get a little, hazy for that.
Yep.
Because look who they have to start with, that's going to be my thing is they have to start. Who do they start? Week 1 against the Browns, right?
No,
Yep.
they play
No,
the
that's
Commanders. They play
yeah.
the
Okay,
NFC
then the
East,
Colts.
but then they play the AFC
Yeah,
West.
that's right. Then the Colts, then the Chargers, then the Eagles. They could easily be 0-4, to start that. Maybe I would have them at 1-3, you know. Um, then they get the Texans, then the Colts again. So they're gonna have to, if that's gonna happen, they're gonna have to start out super hot because they don't have the easiest schedule by any means. I
no.
mean, they play the Cowboys, they play the Titans, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Raiders. You know what I mean? So they actually have a really tough schedule. But hey, once again, we're on a bold prediction show.
Yep.
I will say that I totally 100% expect for the Jaguars as a whole to take a step forward. And I love Trevor Lawrence. I just drafted him, as my second quarterback in the league that me and Zach are doing. I totally believe in the talent 100%. And if anybody can get the best out of their quarterback, it's going to be Doug Peterson, I feel like. So, yeah, I from a talent standpoint, I still think, they have some nice talent. They had a great draft, but I still think they're, a lot of pieces away from being able to be, a division champion.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I said, it's not that I think it's a slam dunk or anything like that.
Oh
Things
no,
have to play into place. I personally think Tennessee is going to take a step back. That's part of the reason I'm saying this. But in Vegas, I would definitely. I mean, they could. I mean, 7 wins and you make your
little,
money. I mean,
I think
little
yeah, a
sprinkle.
little sprinkle goes
I
that.
think eight and nine. I'm looking at their schedule. That's my prediction for them.
Okay.
8 and 9. It's
Eight,
nothing
nine.
too aggressive, but it's definitely the over as well
Yeah.
on there. And I mean, I'm definitely high on the Colts this year, and I think that's a freebie for them to win the division and be a playoff team. I expect to see them in the playoffs and not choke it away like last year. But they also don't have Wentz anymore, so that's good. But I like a lot of who the Jags have, who they brought in at personnel and players.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited for their future. I don't know what in total that can be, and it's unfortunate that they have to play, the
The West.
Broncos, the
Yeah.
Chiefs, the West. It's going to be rough. It's not going to be a fun few weeks there. And I mean, same with the Colts, and then same with some of those NFC East teams. Some keyword there.
I do think they're gonna split with the Colts.
I do think they'll beat the Cowboys. No, I'm just only saying that because Evan's in here.
All right.
Yeah, but to this one last point, Mike, is I'm almost done NBA, man. The Warriors just beat the freaking Celtics. We're almost there. When that finishes up, I'm rolling right into starting to get my research rolling for these future picks, man. So,
Oh, we know.
um,
Oh, I know. We'll
give me
talk about that. Yeah, we
give me
know.
a couple more weeks, and
Yeah, trust me. We'll talk after we. Yeah, I know. So for everyone that hasn't watched the show and hasn't watched the show before, those were our takes. But and actually, this is kind of new for Zach because we've been a duo. So we have our 10 takes. Those were 9. Our 10th take every week is going to be a combination of all 3 of us. So we're all going to have another bonus player we like. It's going to be, I'm going to try to do it a little more rapid than we did before. But Evan, I want to start with Zach for a reason on this one. So, Zach, we're going to start with you. And the reason, before you start talking, I want to bring up Jamie's comment because, Jamie, the reason I haven't brought up your comment yet is because this plays into Zach. So, I'm going to read Jamie's comment. And then, Zach, after that, you can take over, my man. So, Jamie's bold prediction is that Travis Etienne is going to be a top 5 running back and will be a first-round pick next year. Zach, go.
I'll keep it short and sweet since we're splitting this one. But Travis Etienne currently roughly running back 23 in yearly, a little bit around the same in Dynasty. But I'm saying, I was going to say top 15, but I think he's going to finish right around RB10 on the year. I like what he's capable of, and I'm confident with the new head coach that he can provide something exciting with Trevor Lawrence, his college teammate there. So give me all the Travis Etienne shares, but RB10.
So I will say that I think Travis Etienne is going to be a top 10 running back. I completely agree with you. I completely agree with Jamie. I think Jamie's a little more bullish than I am, but I do think that Travis Etienne could end up being a top 10 back. And if he does, I do believe that he will end up being a first round pick in 2023. Evan, what you got?
I mean, heck of a talent, man. It's all the reports out of camp are intriguing that he's looking healthy. He's flying around like his old self. And then we don't know if James Robinson is going to be able to fully bounce back or be ready right away. So Travis Etienne is going to hit the ground rolling. And then, like Zach said, the rapport he already has with Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, I love me some Travis Etienne. I'm getting him wherever I can in Dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to get him in Dynasty, so I think all three of us are on the same page on this one for sure. Evan, what you got about Russell Wilson, buddy?
All right, man. Cheat of the week. We're going to get super bold here. Russell Wilson is going to ball the freak out in Denver. He's not only going to produce one top 20 wide receiver, but he's going to produce two top 20 wide receivers, and Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. With those two young talents at receiver, I mean, not to mention Albert O at tight end, who I really like, Wilson will surpass his career passing yards of 4,219 he set in 2016. He's going to throw for 40-plus touchdowns. Not only will he average close to 30 points a game in fantasy, bringing Jeudy and Sutton along for the ride with him, but he's going to have a monster season, like I already said. And are you ready for it?
Yes.
Russell Wilson, along with that stout Broncos defense, will bring a Super Bowl trophy back to Denver, Colorado. We saw Brady switch teams 2 years ago and do it in Tampa. We saw Stafford go to LA and switch teams last year and win a Super Bowl. Now it's Russ's turn to do it in Denver.
You hurt Mike's feelings. Way to go.
Go, Zach.
Can't talk. I see it. I mean, I don't know if I'm ready to go all the way to the Super Bowl with them, but I see a realm where it's possible. I mean, it's going to be just a complete shit show, gunslinging offenses left and right. Denver has the defense in comparison. Might cover your ears or take off the headphones again compared to the teams like the Chiefs or the Raiders or the Chargers. I'm still taking the Broncos defense over them, but it's going to be really interesting to see because, yeah, you look at the AFC right now and wow, a lot of the top quarterbacks are over there. A lot of the top high scoring offenses are over there. And that's only just going to help with Russell Wilson in regards to padding stats. I don't know if I see both of them as top 20 guys, but I see it being I'm not as high on Jerry Jeudy as you are, but I can see it. If everything goes right, if they're
Love me
cooking,
some Jeudy, man. I love me some Jeudy.
Butterfingers.
All right, so I do like Jeudy, and for my final take, Zach already knows it, but for my final take, I am sticking in the AFC West. I'm going bold. Evan is going to hate me. I know he is. I know he's not going to agree with this. Austin Eckler right now is being drafted as the third RB. He's not finishing in the top 5. Last year, he had 20 touchdowns in the year, 12 rushing, 8 receiving. All 20 of them were in the red zone. He's not going to be able to keep up that production. There is going to be negative TD regression. They did bring in Isaiah Spiller from Texas A&M, who I believe is going to take up some of the carries within the 5-yard line. And here's my reasoning. And I am foreshadowing for more that you guys will hear me say in the summer. And you know this is going to hurt me to say, Evan. The Los Angeles Chargers are going to try to save Etienne's, or not Etienne, try to save Eckler's legs a little bit. They're not going to use him as much. Why? Because to me, they are the favorites to win the AFC West. To win the AFC West and to get into the playoffs and do damage, they are going to try to manage his workload a little more than normal. They're going to use Isaiah Spiller. They might even use Larry Roundtree. They're going to throw the ball. I mean, I think they're going to use the tight end more. They got the wide receivers. I think Herbert has the legs to do a little bit if he has to. Is Eckler still going to be a productive running back? Absolutely. I do like Eckler. I have Eckler on a couple of my teams. I have a couple shares of him. I just think he's being drafted a little bit too high. And part of the reason I think he's drafted a little bit too high, and I didn't want to say it earlier in the show, is I think one of the players that's going to outperform outperform him because of workload, Evan, is Najee Harris. Because it's purely on workload that I think Eckler drops down out of the top 5. Evan?
I mean, just from a PPR standpoint alone, I still, am high on Eckler. But I totally agree with you that it would be smart. It was smart of them to bring in Spiller. And before last year, we never seen Eckler really take on that goal line work. He was, that's what we constantly wanted. Was what we saw last year was, yes, just let freaking Eckler do it all. And we saw what happened. But I just don't know that like you said, he's going to be able to sustain that multiple years in a row, which is why they brought in a talent like Isaiah Spiller to kind of spell, some of those touches and take some of that pounding goal line work away, so they can save Eckler and try to keep him healthy, because he has had moments where he's had injuries that have kept him off the field. And if they can bring in a second talent to kind of spell him and keep him fresh and healthy for the whole season, especially with the extra game now, because they do have Super Bowl aspirations, then I totally agree with you there. And you said he's going to end out of the top 5, correct? He will not be a top 5.
No,
Yeah.
top 5.
Yeah, I have him as my RB7, so I actually agree with you.
Yeah, I'm right in that same range. It's tough. I like him. I mean, I see a realm where he could be productive still and maintain that, but there's so many other guys, that are coming back from injury or getting uh, bigger and brighter spots in regards to workload, where I see them passing him, and I do think they'll preserve him. Also, I did want to touch on one last thing with the Russell Wilson thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why aren't we talking about the shit offensive line that Denver has, though? I mean, Russell Wilson went from one bad offensive line in Seattle to another one in Denver. I get Denver has a similar weaponry to what Seattle had, and they have a much better defense than what Seattle had. But, I mean, that offensive line, not good. Not good.
Russell Wilson is the king of extending plays. He'll be okay.
Yeah, let's see him extend plays for a full season at that mile-high altitude. I hope he's doing his conditioning now.
Zach, I have to tell you something. I had to hear all year last year about Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf just have to get downfield and get a little bit open, because once someone gets out of the pocket, he'll throw them the ball and he'll be touchdown city. I had to hear it all year, so I'm used to this, okay? You'll get used to it in about another month and a half.
All right, that's fair. I mean, Tyler Lockett and DK don't drop balls like Jerry Jeudy does, though, so we'll see.
Oh, but he's such a smooth route runner, man.
I do love his route running.
I do like him. I just want him to be able to get rid of or eliminate those concentration drops. Just watch it through.
Those pinpoint balls Russ is putting on him.
Yeah, as long as he's not getting any more controversial situations.
Oh, God.
They will stick to that.
All right, so we had some great talk, some great banter, some great bowl predictions, and who knows, maybe later in the summer we'll have a little bit more bowl predictions just to get each other riled up again. So let's get some outros, some drops, whatever you guys want to plug. Evan, why don't you start, my man?
Yeah, first off, once again, just super hyped to be back with you guys. Ready for another great season. This was a great topic to, start my return off. Let us know in the comments what bold predictions do you think we're on point with? What do you think's going to hit, if any at all? But yeah, you can find me over at Twitter, EV_RITT3, over at the Bluebird, Ev_Rit3. I'll be doing work and shows at goingfor2.com. But I also do some work for Fantasy Pros, especially NBA. I'll be doing some NFL stuff this season as well. And hit me up on Twitter, man. I love to interact with anyone. I love to talk shop if you need any betting advice. I'm a big DFS guy too. So yeah, just anything, anytime. Love to interact and meet new people. So once again, good to be back, guys. Can't wait for 2 weeks from now.
Zach, where can we find you and what you got going on, my man?
You can find me on Twitter at the Big Pulowski. I'm always ready to talk football, basketball, baseball, dynasty, yearly, or just the sports themselves. I'm into all of it. I'm way too obsessed with all of it. We're in the heat of the NBA Finals right now. I mean, I'm sure Evan's deep in that too. But no, I'm glad Evan was here with us. It's always good every other Tuesday being with you guys, and I'm excited for the next one.
For sure. Just like so you can find me at Drop the Mic FF on Twitter, right down there on the blue bird, like Evan said. You can find me at Going for Two, doing some stuff I haven't written in a while, but I will be doing more. You can also find me on my other show that I help out with, Rum Boys Fantasy Network. I'm on their Rum Boys After Dark show every Friday evening, usually. And then during the year, I'm usually doing stuff with them throughout the week, including NFL AM at the same time as Evan is on another show. But Evan, you were right. I just want to call out. I just want to pump up Evan on his betting stuff. I know when the season starts, we'll have Evan's upset of the week. I can't wait for that again. We always do it. Me and Evan have a couple betting things going out through the week, but
Always a good time.
Always a good time. For me, for Evan and Zach, what a great show. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Have a good evening.